Hello, and welcome back to Storyloom English. I'm thrilled to have you here today for another exciting English learning adventure. Today's story is designed for B1 intermediate level learners, and it's called The Night Shift Mystery. This captivating tale will help you practice a variety of past tenses, including past simple, past continuous, and past perfect, while expanding your vocabulary with words related to work environments, investigation, and problem solving. Our story follows James, a security guard who discovers that his quiet night job isn't as boring as he thought it would be. When strange things start happening in the office building he protects, James must use his detective skills to solve a puzzling mystery that leads to an unexpected discovery about human nature and second chances. As you listen to this story, pay special attention to how we use different past tenses to show the sequence of events and create suspense. Also, notice the descriptive vocabulary we use to paint a picture of the nighttime office setting and James's investigation process. This story contains approximately 180 vocabulary words that are essential for intermediate English learners, including phrasal verbs, idiomatic expressions, and professional terminology. After our story, we'll dive into some key vocabulary explanations that will help you use these words confidently in your own conversations and writing. So settle in, turn off any distractions, and let me take you into the mysterious world of James and his unforgettable night shift experience. James had been working as a night security guard at Meridian Tower for only 3 weeks, but he was already getting used to the routine. Every evening at 10 o'clock, he would arrive at the 40-story office building in the heart of downtown, check in with the day security team, and begin his 12-hour shift patrolling the empty corridors and monitoring the security cameras. The building housed dozens of companies, from small law firms on the lower floors to a major advertising agency that occupied the entire 35th floor. During his first 2 weeks, nothing unusual had happened. James would walk his rounds every 2 hours, checking that all doors were locked, all lights were turned off in the offices, and no unauthorized people were wandering around the building. He spent most of his time in the security office on the ground floor, reading books, studying for his college courses, and occasionally chatting with the cleaning crew who worked from midnight until 6 in the morning. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid well and gave him plenty of time to focus on his studies. However, on this particular Tuesday night, everything changed. James was reviewing his psychology textbook when he noticed something strange on monitor number 12, which showed the 28th floor corridor. A light was flickering on and off in one of the offices, but according to his schedule, all the lights should have been automatically turned off at 9 o'clock. He made a note in his logbook and decided to investigate during his next patrol round at midnight. When James reached the 28th floor, he found that the flickering light was coming from an office belonging to Henderson and Amp Associates, a small accounting firm. The door was locked, as it should be, but through the glass partition, he could see papers scattered across several desks, filing cabinets left open, and a computer screen still glowing. This was definitely not normal. James used his master key to enter the office, and immediately noticed that someone had been searching through the files. Drawers were pulled out. Documents were spread everywhere, and it looked like someone had been looking for something specific. He quickly radioed down to the main security desk to report the situation, but there was no response. That was odd. The desk should never be left unattended during the night shift. James felt his heart rate increase as he realized he might not be alone in the building. He decided to return to the security office immediately, to check the camera recordings and call the police. But when he reached the ground floor, he discovered that the security office door was wide open and all the monitors were displaying nothing but static. Someone had definitely tampered with the security system. James's training kicked in, and he remembered that in situations like this, the most important thing was to stay calm and think logically. He pulled out his cell phone to call 911, but there was no signal. Something was blocking the phone reception in the building. He realized that whoever was doing this had planned it very carefully. James decided to continue his investigation, but this time he would be much more cautious. He took the emergency flashlight from his belt and began systematically checking each floor, starting from the top and working his way down. On the 35th floor, where the advertising agency was located, he found more evidence of the intruder's presence. Several office doors were standing open, computers had been turned on, and there were coffee cups on desks that were still warm. James was beginning to understand that this wasn't a typical break-in. The intruder wasn't trying to steal computers or office equipment. They were looking for information, and they had been in the building for quite some time. As James continued his investigation, he started to piece together a pattern. The intruder had focused on 3 specific companies: Henderson and Amp Associates on the 28th floor, a law firm called Morrison and Amp, partners on the 15th floor, and the advertising agency on the 35th floor. James wondered what these three companies could have in common that would make someone want to search through their files. On the 15th floor, James made a discovery that changed everything. In the law firm's conference room, he found a man sitting at the table with his head in his hands, surrounded by legal documents and financial records. The man looked up when James entered, and instead of running or trying to hide, he simply said, "I suppose you're going to call the police now." James was surprised by the man's calm demeanor, but he kept his distance and asked, "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" The man introduced himself as David Morrison, and James realized with shock that this was actually one of the partners of the law firm. "This is my office," David explained. "Oh, it was my office until last week when my partners voted me out of the firm. They accused me of embezzling money from client accounts, but I didn't do it. I came here tonight to find evidence that would prove my innocence." James listened as David told his story. For the past 6 months, money had been disappearing from the firm's client trust accounts, and all the evidence seemed to point to David. His partners had given him an ultimatum: resign quietly or face criminal charges. David had chosen to resign, but he couldn't live with people thinking he was a thief. He had spent weeks trying to figure out how to get back into the building to search for evidence, and tonight he had finally found a way. "I used to be a security consultant before I became a lawyer," David explained. "I knew how to disable the security system temporarily without causing permanent damage. I also knew that the cleaning crew's key cards would give me access to all the offices." James was faced with a difficult decision. Technically, David was trespassing and had tampered with the security system, which were serious crimes. But James also understood what it felt like to be falsely accused of something. During his senior year of high school, he had been suspended for cheating on a test when actually another student had been looking at his paper. The real cheater never came forward, and James had to live with the suspicion and whispers from his classmates for months. "What kind of evidence are you looking for?" James asked. David showed him a complex financial document that he had found in the accounting firm's files. "Henderson and Amp Associates handles the bookkeeping for several law firms in this building, including mine. I discovered that someone has been creating fake invoices and billing clients for services that were never provided. The money from these fake invoices was being deposited into an account that someone set up using my personal information, but I never opened that account." James examined the documents and saw that David was right. There was definitely evidence of financial fraud, but it was too complex for James to fully understand. David continued his explanation. "The advertising agency upstairs has been helping to create fake marketing materials to make these fraudulent services look legitimate. I think someone has been using all three companies to run an elaborate scheme, and they've been setting me up to take the blame." James realized that David wasn't the criminal. He was actually the victim of a very sophisticated fraud. "What do you want to do now?" James asked. David looked tired and defeated. "I don't know. Even if I take this evidence to the police, who's going to believe me? I'm already a disgraced lawyer who broke into his old office building, and whoever did this has been very careful to make sure all the evidence points to me." James thought for a moment, then made a decision that surprised both of them. "I believe you," he said, "and I think I know how we can solve this problem together. But first, we need to fix the security system and make it look like nothing happened tonight. Then, we're going to do this the right way." Over the next 2 hours, James and David worked together to restore the building's security system and carefully document all the evidence they had found. James used his knowledge of security procedures to ensure that their investigation would be admissible in court, while David used his legal expertise to organize the financial documents in a way that clearly showed the pattern of fraud. They discovered that the scheme involved a total of 7 different companies in the building, and the person behind it all was actually David's former partner, Richard Morrison, who happened to be David's own brother. James learned that family betrayal was often the most painful kind, as David explained how Richard had been struggling with gambling debts and had slowly drawn David's other partners into the scheme by convincing them that David was the one stealing money. By 6 in the morning, when the day shift security team arrived, James and David had compiled a comprehensive report with all the evidence needed to expose the fraud and clear David's name. James explained the situation to his supervisor, who immediately contacted the police and the building management company. Within a week, the police had arrested Richard Morrison and 2 other partners from the law firm. The stolen money was recovered and returned to the affected clients, and David was fully exonerated. The district attorney even commended David for his thorough investigation and offered him a position as a consultant for white-collar crime cases. James was recognized by the building management company for his professionalism and integrity during the incident. They offered him a promotion to head of security, with a significant salary increase and the opportunity to work day shifts while continuing his college education. But more importantly, James had gained a friend and mentor in David who helped him understand that sometimes the most valuable rewards come from doing the right thing, even when it's complicated and risky. Now let's explore some crucial vocabulary from tonight's story that will enhance your English communication skills. The word patrolling means walking around an area regularly to guard or inspect it. Security guards patrol buildings, police officers patrol neighborhoods, and soldiers patrol borders. You might say, the lifeguard was patrolling the beach, or park rangers patrol the hiking trails. Unauthorized describes someone or something that doesn't have official permission to be somewhere or do something. In our story, James was checking for unauthorized people in the building. You can use this word in sentences like, unauthorized parking will result in a fine, or she gained unauthorized access to the computer system. The term embezzling refers to the crime of stealing money that you're supposed to be managing for someone else, typically in a business or organization. David was falsely accused of embezzling client funds. Related words include embezzlement, the noun, and embezzler, the person who commits this crime. Tampered means to interfere with something in a way that causes damage or makes unauthorized changes. Someone had tampered with the security system in our story. You might hear, someone tampered with the evidence, or don't tamper with the electrical wiring. Elaborate as an adjective means very detailed, complex, or carefully planned. The fraud scheme in our story was elaborate because it involved multiple companies and careful planning. You can say, she made elaborate preparations for the party, or the criminal had an elaborate plan. Exonerated means to be officially cleared of blame or responsibility for something you were accused of doing. David was exonerated when the real criminals were caught. This is a formal word often used in legal contexts. The DNA evidence exonerated the wrongly convicted man. Finally, integrity refers to the quality of being honest, having strong moral principles, and doing the right thing even when it's difficult. James showed integrity by helping David instead of just calling the police immediately. You might hear, she's known for her personal integrity, or the company maintains high standards of integrity in all business dealings. What an incredible journey we've experienced together tonight. James's story reminds us that life often presents us with situations that aren't simply black and white, and that true wisdom comes from looking beyond the surface to understand the complete picture. When James first discovered David in the office, he could have easily followed the rules, called the police, and gone back to his routine. Instead, he chose to listen, to investigate further, and to use both his heart and his mind to make a decision. This story teaches us several valuable lessons about human nature and moral courage. First, we learn that people who appear to be breaking the rules might actually be fighting for justice in the only way they know how. David's midnight investigation wasn't really about breaking and entering. It was about clearing his name and restoring his reputation. Second, we see how important it is to question assumptions and look for evidence before making judgments about other people. James could have assumed that David was guilty simply because he found him in the office illegally, but instead, he chose to hear David's side of the story. Finally, this tale shows us that doing the right thing often requires taking risks and thinking creatively about solutions. James risked his job security by helping David, but his willingness to think outside conventional procedures led to a much better outcome for everyone involved. The friendship that developed between James and David also illustrates how shared challenges can create strong bonds between people from very different backgrounds. As you continue developing your English skills, remember that language learning, like solving mysteries, requires patience, careful attention to detail, and the courage to keep investigating, even when things seem confusing. Every new vocabulary word you master, every grammar structure you understand, and every story you comprehend is bringing you closer to fluency and opening doors to new opportunities. Thank you for joining me for this thrilling mystery at Storyloom English. Don't forget to subscribe for more engaging stories that will challenge your English skills while entertaining you with unforgettable characters and plot twists. Until next time, keep practicing, keep learning, and keep believing in the power of stories to transform both our language abilities and our understanding of the world around us.